Hi, my name is Ray,
Hi, this is Michael.
and welcome to another episode of Ray's Economics Clue Book. Today, we're talking about consumer and producer surplus.
Okay.
So what is consumer surplus? Well, basically, it's our definition of economic welfare. Welfare is basically the difference between what a consumer is willing to pay and what's actually paid in a positive amount.
Yeah.
So let's say if you're willing to pay $8 for a certain product, and you only have to pay $5 because $5 is the equilibrium market price, then therefore your consumer surplus is 8 minus 5, which is $3.
Yeah.
Because you save $3 on what you're willing to pay at its highest. And so therefore that's your measure of welfare, the amount you're able to save by not paying the maximum what you're willing to pay.
Yeah, it's I just want to remind you guys that it's not a profit.
Yeah.
It's just a consumer feel there is a difference between whatever they want to pay, willing to pay, and whatever they actually paid.
It's theoretical saved money, basically.
Yeah.
We look at a market here. Let's say our market equilibrium is at $5, so we have our equilibrium price at $5. Let's say it's like
right here.
The supply curve would be like that. Okay, and so we actually pay $5. So everything below $5 is what $5 times quantity is what we actually pay. This is what the overall paid amount in money. However, if we look at discrete prices at discrete amounts, for example, we look at discrete. If a consumer is willing to pay $9 and they only have to pay $5, their surplus is represented in that yellow rectangle of $4 height.
Yes.
$8 is $3 height, $7 is $2 height, $6 is $1 height. So at these discrete dollar values, you see these yellow rectangles represent the consumer surplus at those discrete dollar values that some consumers are willing to pay at a maximum.
I think the key here is basically when we look at this demand curve. We assume that there's a mix of different consumers.
Yeah.
Some consumer willing to pay $9, some consumer willing to pay $8, but some consumer just willing to pay $2.
Yeah, and so this gray area represent what consumers did not buy.
Yeah, not buying.
This is basically unrecognized consumer surplus. If our market price is lower, this would become consumer surplus.
Yeah. So the thing is, consumer surplus is really for those theoretical economical welfare gain from those customers they are willing to pay. Who actually willing to pay with $9, $8, $7, $6, and $5, right? In our example.
And so look at change in consumer surplus. Here we only look at the entire area under a certain triangular region in our demand curve that's cut off at the market price range because we're not looking at price discretely anymore. We're looking at a continuous price range that is above the market price that creates market surplus. And so the price range being the amount that some consumers are willing to pay at a maximum. And so look at change in consumer surplus. If our price changes, market price changes from $15 to $10, the consumer surplus will increase. This is our original consumer surplus right here in the light pink. Now, of those existing buyers who already buy at $15, if the price is lower to $10, those existing buyers, their overall consumer surplus increases here in CS dash.
Actually, for those existing customers, when the price drops from 15 to 10, they are even more willing to buy.
And their surplus increases even more because the difference between what they're willing to pay at a maximum and what they actually have to pay at the market price increases. However, if the market price lowers, we see a quantity increase in demand. More consumers enter the market. And so more consumers enter the market, that means there's a new source of consumer surplus now. So our new source of consumer surplus is represented by this increase in quantity in the width of the triangle and the height being the difference between the two market prices, 15 and 10. And so we see here, everything here is consumer surplus because it's lower than what the consumers are willing to pay the maximum. Except the consumer surplus here is made up of new consumers that enter the market because the price lowered from 15 to 10.
Yes, because for example, this is a book market. When the book price reduced from 15 to 10, then the book sold will be from 50 to 80. Okay, so that means actually there's some new customers, new consumers enter the market. So that's a new consumer surplus. So basically, when we look at simple geometric knowledge will tell us the original consumer surplus is this triangle, and when the price drops and the new consumer surplus is going to be this triangle. Okay, so CS plus CS and plus NCS, the new consumer surplus. Okay.
So now we have producer surplus, which is the exact opposite of consumer surplus. And so producers want to maximize the price that they were willing to sell at. So they instead of having a maximum price they're willing to sell at, because they're willing to sell at as high as you want, they have a minimum price they're willing to sell at. Because they're producers, they want to sell at a higher price. So so we see here, producer surplus is the difference between the market price that the producers are selling at versus the minimum price that those certain producers would be willing to sell at. And so let's say you're willing to sell a price at $2, but since the market price is $5, you sell it at $5.
Yeah,
so your welfare as a producer is the difference between what you sell at and what the minimum you're willing to sell at.
Yeah.
Which is in the case of your previous example is $3, 5 minus 2. And so we see here everything below the market price but above the supply curve is producer surplus.
Yeah, the producer surplus again is based on one simple assumption.
Yeah.
We have a mix of different producers.
Yes.
Some producers, they are very efficient. For example, market price is, let's say, $2.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a small, a number of producers. They are willing to sell because they can actually willing to sell at, for example, $1.50. So the market price is $2. There's no problem.
And so basically, producer surplus is basically on the graph everything below market price but above the supply curve.
Yeah.
And so as we look at changes in producer surplus, the same thing. If price increases from $10 to $15, which benefits producers, the producer surplus from existing producers already selling at $10 increases here in the PS-teal, adding on to the PS light blue.
Yeah.
And however, we have new producers entering the market at a higher price. And those new producers, their producer surplus is NPS in this triangle here. Everything below the market price but above the producer surplus curve.
Yeah.
And everything to the right of the increase in producers entering the market from 50 to 80 units sold.
Yeah, it's actually pretty simple. Let's say the book price is still books market, and the book price increased from 10 to 15.
Yeah.
Then we have a new producer that come to the market because they're probably willing to sell at $12. At the original $10, they are not willing to sell because they are not that efficient.
Yeah.
And now the market price is $15. Now they enter the market.
Yeah.
So that's why we see actually based on the supply curve, our volume of the product sold is increased from 50 to 80. So the additional 30 books are sold by the new producers.
Yes.
Because that's again, it's just flip side of the consumer surplus. We want to stress here is because that reflects the fact that we have different producers. Some producers are efficient. $10 they can still sell.
Yeah.
Okay, because they are willing to sell at 8 or 4 and the market price is 10. They're happy. Okay, so they go to sell. And so the price goes to 15. Less efficient, the producers they become. Join the market. So we have a new producer surplus.
Yes.
So again, it's this triangle originally. Yeah. Now, if the price increase from 10 to 15, then we have this big triangle for the new producer surplus. PS plus PSB plus NPS.
Yes.
Okay.
And so total surplus is basically consumer surplus plus producer surplus.
Sure.
Consumer surplus being everything above market price but below the demand curve, and producer surplus being everything below the market price but above the producer's supply curve.
Yeah.
And so this represents overall welfare of everybody who engages in buying or selling in the market at the current market price. Overall welfare, overall surplus.
Yeah. That's called a total surplus.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's pretty simple.
For a final clue, consumer surplus measures economic gains with consumers, the welfare of consumers willing to pay and what they actually pay. The difference between what they actually willing to pay, what they actually pay is their consumer surplus. And basically a simple geometric analysis shows this consumer surplus area. The area, which is basically represents price times quantity, is our overall consumer surplus represented monetarily or financially. Producer surplus is the exact opposite, the inverse. It measures economic gains of producers willing to sell and what they actually sell. It is difference between what they actually sell between what they're willing to sell, because what they're willing to sell has to be lower than what they actually sell or equal to what they actually sell for them to actually engage in selling in the current market price.
Yeah.
And so once again, it's geometric analysis.
Yeah.
And so basically total surplus is consumer surplus plus producer surplus. And our graphics really show the clue, because our graph shows that everything below the consumer, everything that's below the demand curve or above the supply curve that still meets the qualification of the market price, or it basically represents our total surplus.
Yeah, I think that's pretty important because in microeconomic analysis, graphic is very important. It's a key to drive your understanding here. And again, we have consumer surplus and the producer surplus like this way because we have a mix of different consumers. They have a different reserve price, right? And we have different set of producers. They are not the same efficient. Okay, so they also have a different reserve price for whatever price they're willing to sell. Okay, So today we just introduce the consumer and producer surplus, and the next time we're gonna derive more concepts based on this surplus. All right. See you. Bye bye.
Bye.